What up YouTube, my name is Happiness and welcome to my channel. Okay, so you saw the thumbnail, you saw the title. Yes, racism as a black Afro Latino. So let me just play it like this. I saw that there was one of my videos whereby I entered a caption as by saying that when Zoe Saldana won the Academy Award, people thought that she did not include the black part of her heritage, but just a woman of South American descent. You see,
my people and who I am and my pride of being a black woman and a Latina woman, an American woman, and
but I was silent because I'm never going to justify or explain my blackness. I know who I am. I do not have a problem with that. I don't hate myself for being black. I don't think I'm privileged for being lighter. I wasn't raised with
that I had the permission because I was a black woman, and I am, but it was Nina Simone.
And which is, it offended most of the black community because they thought that she doesn't know herself, and being that most people from the Dominican Republic are from African descent, are black. So I just want to also take it back to saying that wherever you go in the world, you'll find that there will be sort of like racism among certain groups. Even here in South Africa, because I am from South Africa, so you find that Europeans have racism amongst themselves. You find the Afrikaner, the people to which Trump acknowledged and gave them refugee status to America, are not in good terms, or they also hate people of English descent. You see, you find that these two groups, Afrikaners and English-speaking people in South Africa, don't get along. You see, and also you find that colored people have considered being racist. No, consider colored people in South Africa see that they are unfairly treated by black people because black people are racist towards colored people. That's how they see it here in South Africa. So I did this video so that we can understand like why in South America, whenever you are black, you are hated upon. You are seen as because you can also see on how even Haitian people are being treated in America. You see, because one thing we have to also understand is that at the end of the day, we are all people. We share the same blood. It's only the color of our skin that makes us different, but inside, when you open this flesh, we are one and the same thing. So let me play this video so that we can get to see what other people's opinion are in terms of, racism in South America and in America on being an Afro-Latino.
Haitians are Latino, and if you think otherwise, you're just racist. I was on Beyonce's internet today. I stumbled upon a post where the girl was talking about the first Caribbean country in Latin America to gain its independence, and they said this.
What Caribbean country was the first to gain independence in all of Latin America?
Dominican Republic.
You have a guess?
Haiti?
That is correct.
Technically, that's not Latin America. They don't consider themselves Latin America. But hey, if because of the geography they're considered Latin America, I digress.
Well, as you can imagine, the comment section was filled with all types of anti-Blackness, anti-Haitianness, the list goes on. But at the end of the day, I hate the term Latino. I hate it because it's this fake overarching ideology that America really created to describe all of the countries in Latin America. I don't even know the definition. What I find is Latinos run towards the term Latino to run away from Blackness, or run away from Africanness, or run away from indigenousness. You can be Latino and be Black. You can be Latino and be European. You can be Latino and be Asian. You can be Latino and be Arab. Everyone doesn't look like Sofia Gara. That's not what it means to be Latino. So you guys want to run away from people who look like me being Latino just to have people who look like you being Latino, and that's why I hate the term. But Google, as always, would have answered that question for you. There's a popular ideology that is across Latin America called mejorar la raza, and that is the reason why a lot of your grandparents and be as dark as me or black as tar saying that they're not black. Stop the madness. One love.
¿Qué pasa? Que el trauma todavía se mantiene ahí, and we just try to cover it up, right? Yo creo que en la comunidad latina hay que hablar las cosas como son. No me gusta generalizar, but a lot of us are very hypocrite. And that's just the truth. You know what I'm saying? There is racism. Yo no soy racista. I would never say qué cosa. Would you want your daughter or your son to marry a black person?
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
As long as they're happy.
Oye, but she's right. Not most people are not like that.
Not most people are not.
Most people have the subtext of racism, whether they tell you to your face, I'm not racist, they're feeling it in their thinking.
And it's the truth. This is not to pinpoint anybody on this table specifically. It's for the people that are watching. Dejen de ser tan hipócrita. And it's the truth. And if you're racist, don't pretend to like us and really not like us. Tú eres muy linda para casarte con un negro, mi amor. Tú tienes que mejorar la raza. Pero, mi amor, esas facciones que tú tienes, the same thing with the nose. I've heard it all. And they make sure that you know that you are the darkest one. It's like, I see, I know it. Y'all ain't got to tell me. I know. And don't get it twisted with this wig that I got on.
Because you keep saying we, you know, and it's like your kind of connection with the black community, but you're Cuban. Like
I'm black first.
Yeah.
I'm black first.
So
what
I
always
ask,
tell
like,
people,
how you identify
but
yourself.
Are you full Cuban?
I'm full Cuban.
I thought he was black too.
I know,
but I am black.
No,
I am
here's
black.
everyone thinks that you are like the black lineage.
All right,
like,
so
you know, like,
let me explain how it works. You know, this is another thing that I feel like we as black people get caught up in, that
semantics
that separates us as opposed to uniting us. We get caught up in where the ship dropped us off versus where the ship picked us up. You know what I'm saying? We all come from the same root. It's just a tree with different branches. The same boat that picked up your ancestors picked up my ancestors. Only they dropped yours off here. They made a pit stop in the Caribbean and dropped mine off. But my ancestors still dealt with slavery. You know, still dealt with being, you know, having their family and their lives ripped from them, and having to come back from colonialism and slavery. You know, so and it's not just African Americans, it's Afro-Cubans, it's Afro-Dominicans, it's Afro-Puerto Ricans. Like, all these people got to get out of their colonialized minds and stop thinking, oh, I'm not this, I'm this. Okay, yeah, you can be Latin, but you're black first.
And the separatism that takes us apart when we all have the same struggle. We all experience the same struggle.
Because when I walk into a room, they ain't thinking, oh, we're going to give him a pass because he's Latin.
Yeah.
Or if a cop pulls me over, he's not like, oh, okay, I'm not going to shoot him or I'm not going to beat his ass because he's Cuban. No, I'm black. You know what I'm saying? And I'm dealing with the same struggle. So we all gotta unite and fight for the struggle together, because we're all dealing with the exact same struggle.
The best example of how anti-black the Latinx community can be and is that the Dominican Republic and Haiti is on the same island, but only the Dominican Republic is considered Latin America, to most people at least. Like, it's only been in the past few years that I realized that since I'm Haitian American, I am also Afro-Latinx. In the way it doesn't even sit right with me, because I've never been considered that by the Latinx community, is wild. Like, even on our island of Hispaniola, the anti-Blackness, the racism, the colorism is wild. And I don't know, like, it literally blows my mind.
A lot of people seem confused and surprised about how 60% of Latino voters voted for Donald Trump after he's made countless racist and xenophobic remarks against not only Latinos, but also immigrants from other countries. But Afro-Latinos, we're not surprised at all. Racism is alive and well in the Latino culture with things like mejorar la raza, which means to better the race, which is like street eugenics. Calling your family members based on their skin tone, like negro, negrita, as a loving term, but it's obviously derogatory because the anti-Blackness is so prevalent. And the craziest part, if we were able to break down the Afro Latino votes from the white and mixed Latinos, we'd probably see that Afro Latinos inflated the Harris support from Latinos.
So I was on the plane, and this person sitting next to me heard me speaking Spanish with somebody else that was sitting next to me. So they were pretty shocked. And the person next to me was like, the minute I heard you, I knew you were Dominican. And I was like, then I went on explaining how I'm from Honduras and that there's black people there. But the person wanted to go back and forth with me and told me I was not black. I'm like, how you gonna tell me I'm not black? So then I went on explaining, the difference between nationality, race, ethnicity. But the person refused to believe that I was black. And then I was like, I'm not talking anymore, forget it.
And that is exactly what these narratives of race mixture in Latin America do. They erase the existence of entire populations, namely black people and indigenous people. Like black people or Afro-descendants in Latin America weren't even being counted on the census across Latin America until the late 90s and early 2000s. Like in Mexico, they didn't even start counting Afro-descendants until the 2020 census. And that was like after much pushback and pressure from Afro-descendant groups for decades. Many people to this day still don't think black Latin Americans exist. Why? Because black people are often and routinely excluded from the national imaginary in Latin American countries, or what it means to be Guatemalan, or what it means to be Mexican, or what it means to be even Dominican to this day. Dr. Odo Lopez writes about this extensively, focusing on the Garifuna people in Central America. They discuss how the existence of Garifuna people, a primarily Afro-descendant population, just challenges the myth, the state-crafted myth, that these Central American nations are primarily or exclusively mestizo, or a blend of European and indigenous ancestry. Like a lot of Central Americans, not all though, refer to Garifuna people as those people who just live on the eastern coast, and that they're not representative of the national population. Anyways, these narratives operate to just erase blackness and indigeneity and reinforce whiteness and or mestizo supremacy, period.
I cannot stand when people try to pretend that race doesn't exist in countries outside of the United States, especially when we're talking about the Western Hemisphere and the Americas. This idea that there's no black and white in Brazil, we're just Brazilians, is so wrong. Something that I've seen a lot in my research, because I do study race in Latin America, that's what I'm doing in my PhD, right? And something that I found so common is that people will try to say, no, racism doesn't exist here in this country because we're not like the United States. Like the US is used as like the little standard for racism, when I feel like that's really fucked. Just because racism in your country doesn't present the same way as it does in the United States doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And the same thing, just because race doesn't present the same way in the United States doesn't mean it doesn't exist. The biggest difference is that in the US, we promoted segregation. We wanted the really strong dividing lines between black and white, versus in various Latin American nations, they did not want that. They wanted to make it all mixed so that they can have this whole myth of racial democracy, or since we're all the same color, racism can exist, right? So yes, instead of like in the United States where we have really strong lines between black and white, you guys have a lot more middle ground. That being said, that doesn't mean that people on other sides of the spectrum don't exist and don't experience marginalization, especially the blackest people. The crazy thing is, very rarely, very, very rarely have I ever had a black person in a Latin American country tell me that racism doesn't exist. It's always someone who is not black that is telling me that. Someone who is not part of the most marginalized communities telling me that racism doesn't exist. Because every single black person I've met in a Latin American country has told me otherwise. Every single one. And just because you want to think that racism doesn't exist because it doesn't manifest the same way it does in the United States doesn't mean that it does not exist. Black people feel the impacts of racism in Latin America as well. Indigenous people also can feel the impacts of racism as well. And white people also still have privileges, and people having closer proximity to whiteness have privileges in Latin America, just like in the United States.
Why are so many Latinos racist against Black people? Good question. So first of all, let me start by acknowledging that's the truth. And anyone that says otherwise is not helpful in this whole conversation. Like white people saying, I don't see color. Secondly, race is just a construct that was invented by European people intended to divide us, which they successfully managed to do. And unfortunately, just like many other purposefully marginalized communities, we play along exactly into the narrative of letting them divide us. We all have that tío or abuelito or papa in our family that is racist, that is, has issues with Black people or Asian people, or is homophobic or transphobic. And most likely it's more family members than not. The issue is that it's really difficult to have these conversations. But we need to have these conversations with our own community. We need to call out, call in, and educate our own family members, our own friends. And too often I see Latinos stay silent. And they say, oh, that's just how he is. And yes, I use he a lot because it's a lot of times the man, at least in my experience. And if you live in LA, you probably know the scandal we recently had with the leaked audio. For me, the only scandal really was that so many Latinos that I know pretended that that's a surprise. Really? That's exactly like white people pretending that they're surprised that racism exists. There are so many issues in our Latino community, from being anti-Black to brown people calling themselves white. I mean, please identify as whatever you want, but it's weird. To light-skinned Latinos like myself, pretending that they have the same racism to deal with as a Black person. And then there is the whole other layer of not being Latino enough, not being Black enough, not being brown enough. It's like our community is so busy tearing each other down that we lost sight of who is actually doing the oppression here. I had a US-born friend here in LA whose both parents were Mexican, but she has never been to Mexico and she doesn't speak Spanish. And she told me that in her opinion, I wasn't really Mexican, which I thought was funny. And I immigrated as an adult. I'm not even first generation. I'm a Mexican immigrant in the United States. But to her, just because my mom was European, that was enough to tell me I wasn't actually Latina. And those are the same kind of people that pretend that all Latinos are brown and act like Afro-Latinos don't exist. It's time for all of us to unite because together we're not the minority. We are the majority if we just have each other's back.
Come here right quick, let's talk for a second. A couple of days ago, the National Hispanic Foundation made this post. And not to take away from these ladies' achievements at all, but there was one notable absence. In fact, a pretty big one, as in nothing about the first Afro-Latino to be nominated in the Best Actor category type of absence. Now, of course, after some backlash, they did make a much-deserved post about Coleman Domingo, but no hashtag Latino representation that time around. Interesting. Let's take a stroll. This is a Latino, so this is Latino representation. This is a Latina, so this is Latina representation. That is Latinx representation, but so is all of that. See where I'm going with this? Black people can be Latinos. Yes, Afro-Latinas are a thing, and yet they're not often centered in conversations within or surrounding Latin America. Like when John Leguizamo called out the lack of Latinx representation at the Emmys, which fair, but also interesting considering his co-star in When They See Us, Gerald Jerome, had won an Emmy and there was relatively no noise from the community surrounding his big win. Or the time J Balvin was named Afro-Latino Artist of the Year, even though artists like Goyo exist, or like when Gina Torres said this. Now, some of you may be wondering why I, as a non-Latina, would be speaking out about this, but really, why wouldn't I? There are over 100 million Black people in Latin America, which makes them one of the largest, yet also somehow least visible minorities in the region. Of course, part of this boils down to anti-Blackness. Their erasure and intentional division has been very purposeful till Azola's time, right? But that's for another day. All this to say that while I do agree that much more needs to be done in terms of Latinx representation, I thought I'd also just put a little refresher out there about how Latinos don't just come in one shade, or rather that the shade spectrum doesn't end here. So let's keep that in mind moving forward.
This is a conversation that we have to have because a lot of Dominicans do not want to hear this. In fact, when they are seen as Black here in the United States, they say, I'm not Black, I'm Dominican. And yes, as I mentioned before, I am Dominican. My mom is white and my father, it's not necessarily Black, but close enough. This is my mom. She's literally white. And when she was a kid, she was also naturally blonde and she has green eyes. This is me and my siblings. And as you can see, I'm this one, and I was blonde. Here is a picture with my dad. This is me. This is me again with my siblings. And I was the only sibling who was kind of blonde like my mom. And as a kid, people made me feel as if I was more valuable just because I was blonde. Like I was better than my siblings. Like, oh, she's la rubia, you know, they used to say those things to me because I was blonde. And when my father would go out with me by himself without my mom, people wouldn't think that I was his kid. But yes, in Latin America and here, everywhere, whiteness, the closer you are to whiteness, the better you are. That's what they teach us in the Dominican Republic, in Latin America, here in the United States. I would say that in the entire world. And that's what colonialism left us, because especially in the Dominican Republic, remember that our history, we live in an island that we share with Haiti. And I would say that 99% of people in Haiti are black. In the Dominican Republic, I will have to go back to history to 1505 with the devastation of Osorio, where basically they devastated the part of the island that is now Haiti, and then the Spanish moved to the part that it's the Dominican Republic, and they were mixing with the slaves and the indigenous people. But the French, the Portuguese, and the people who came with slaves to the part that today is Haiti, they wouldn't mix with them. They brought their women. The Spanish didn't bring women, so they were having sex with slaves and indigenous women. That's why in the Dominican Republic, you can see white people, black people, people in the middle. We're mixed, more mixed than they are in Haiti. And then our history, our independence was from Haiti. So there you have the history of Dominicans seeing Haiti as the oppressor, basically. And then in Haiti, obviously, they have more black people than in the Dominican Republic. And then it's not only about blackness that is rejected in the Dominican Republic, they even see it as something patriotic about it. And then they reject the blackness, not only because of culture, because they want to disassociate themselves from Haitians, but then when they come to the United States, they say that they're not black, even though literally we are descendants of Africans too. And Haitians are literally our brothers. 3 minutes is not enough to talk about this.
Okay guys, you saw their opinions in terms of their thoughts on how racism in South America is having effect on a certain minority group, which is black people. And also I do really agree that, like people from Haitian descent, okay, from the way I see it, they are the ones who are mostly being targeted, because even Donald Trump, he doesn't like them that much. But I'm gonna say back to saying that at the end of the day, all of us, we are people, we are the same. Doesn't matter of the color of our skin, but at the end of the day, we are on this earth to play a game, and let's treat each other with respect. So, but in terms of that, thank you for watching my channel. Please like and subscribe, and let's meet up to the next one. Peace out.